now, the Republican senator from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, I know you, everyone, it doesn't matter if they're an elected official or not, has been following this very, very closely, the well-being, the whereabouts of Kayla Mueller. This is exactly what everyone feared. What are you hearing?
Well, exactly what you said. I know how hard Senator McCain has been trying to help this young lady. He's talked to the parents. He's been working with our government. And all I can say is that her family's got to be heartbroken. But my God, this is the best example, this young lady, of being an American, being a decent human being that one could imagine. And I believe very strongly that she's in God's hands. She's going to have an eternity befitting her beliefs and her actions. And those who captured her and, in my view, killed her, I think God will judge them differently.
Well, I think her goodness, Senator, clearly illustrates the evil of those who are holding her hostage and who, one way or another, are responsible for her death. We haven't confirmed exactly how she died, but I don't think there's any question exactly who is responsible here then, Senator. So the question becomes then, and this is an area where you've done a lot of talking recently, what do you do about it? What do you do about ISIS right now?
Well, what you try to do is degrade and destroy. The president's got the right goal, which is to degrade and destroy this evil force that will attack our homeland soon if we don't act. So you keep building up capacity in Iraq, rebuild the Iraqi security forces, supply the Kurds with arms that really actually are modern, try to get the Sunni tribes to break away from ISIL in the Anbar region, and you retake Mosul and you liberate Anbar. You can't do that without a larger American ground component assisting the Iraqis, but the real problem in degrading and destroying ISIL lies in Syria.
Senator, you have spoken about boots on the ground. You are out much further than many in your own party, certainly many Democrats, in suggesting that there should be a ground force. You say a ground force of some 10,000 people, including American troops. How would that work? You want U.S. ground forces in Syria invading Raqqa, for instance, going door to door there? Do you want those same forces in Iraq, perhaps involved in the invasion of Mosul?
Just listen closely to what I'm trying to convey. I've talked to American military leaders and commanders that have been in the region for over a decade. They've come to conclude that the Iraqi security forces lack capacity in the area of intelligence, that our special forces are much better than anyone's on the planet, and that you'll need air capability, you will need forward air controllers, you will need to embed American trainers probably at the company level. The majority of the fighting force will be Iraqis and Arabs when it comes to Syria. But the lack of capability of any Arab army that I know of is pretty stunning. So what we want is an American component to go in on the ground in Syria, led by the Arabs in the region, but no Arab coalition is going to be formed unless you deal with Assad. The Arabs are not going to fight ISIL and allow Syria to be dominated by Assad, a puppet of Iran. So the strategy fails in a couple of ways. If you train the Free Syrian Army, which is a good thing, you send them into Syria on the ground, Assad will kill them if they get any strength because they'll eventually turn on him. So the strategy needs an American ground component. The vast majority of the members of the coalition will be from the region, but the American ground component is the difference between success and failure. And the worst thing of all is to take ISIL on and lose.
Well, taking ISIL on and losing is, I don't think many Americans would say, an option here. But when it comes to what you're proposing, there are many of your colleagues on Capitol Hill, those even in the Republican Party, who disagree, who do not want to see any soldiers, let alone 10,000 American soldiers on the ground fighting ISIS. What realistically do you think is going to actually come through Congress as the president is preparing to put forth his request for war authority?
There will be an authorization to use military force that I would support that allows the degrading and destruction of ISIL to occur. You're not going to destroy ISIL from the air. Somebody's got to go in on the ground in Syria. I am convinced that we'll have to be part of that force or we risk losing. As to Iraq,
you think there is no other option in success here other than American troops on the ground?
There's no option without a ground component. You can't win from the air. If you agree with the proposition you can't win from the air alone, somebody's got to go on the ground. Name an Arab army that exists today that's willing
Senator.
to go in on the ground in Syria without American help.
Let me just ask you this. On the authorization of force vote along those lines, you want ground troops. Would you vote for any measure that restricts the use of ground forces?
There's a measure that says no enduring offensive capability. I'm not talking about an Iraqi invasion of 100,000 American troops that would hold the territory. I'm not talking about an occupying American force. I'm talking about a force to supplement the regional forces that exist today. If you took American combat power off the table in terms of ground troops, I'd vote against it. But we've got 3,000 people in Iraq right now. That's not enough. The goal is to win and to supplement the Iraqis and any coalition going in on Syria. To my colleagues, if you think you can win this fight without any American troops on the ground, your evaluation of the capabilities in the region are far different than mine, and I want to win for the sake of this young lady and for the sake of all who have suffered under the hands of this brutal regime who's burned a man alive. For God's sakes, let's get on with degrading and destroying. I'm not worried about the politics here. I'm trying to convey to the people of South Carolina, I know you're tired. I know you're tired of being in the Mideast, but I'd rather fight the war over there before it comes here. So I'm not talking about a political position. I'm talking about a reasoned military solution to a very hard problem that requires America in the air and on the ground at some level.
Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, thank you very much for your time.